Hey guys, welcome back. In today's video, I'm going to cover 6 very chilling stories from the Let's Not Meet subreddit. Of course, I have obtained permission from each author to include their experience here. If you have a story of your own that you'd like to share, please consider writing to my own subreddit, r/sleepyyurei, link in description. Anyways, make yourself comfortable, and let's get right into the stories. Surprisingly, this is one of those stories I forgot about until a few days ago, when I was talking to a school friend on call and I got reminded of this. She was pretty freaked out when I told her, and so was I when I started to think about it again. This happened when I was roughly maybe 7 or 8, so some of the details are fuzzy, but I remember it pretty vividly. This may seem like unimportant context, but my family had just moved to America, and we're renting the top portion of your regular suburban house in a pretty safe cul-de-sac. I had friends. They were triplets, about 3 or 4 houses down, not far at all. Every day I'd go hang out with them, and around 9 or 10 of the night, my older brother, around 11 or 12 I'd say, would make the 2-minute walk and come get me and walk me home since I was pretty young. One night, he came to get me as usual. The sun wasn't fully down, but it was getting pretty dark. We started on the walk as normal when he started casting glances over his shoulder. I didn't really notice until he shoved me hard away from the sidewalk and between 2 houses. Each house had a huge fence that separated their backyard, not ours though, and he made me crouch behind the fence. I remember being really scared, but more so confused since I had no damn idea what the hell was going on. More specifically, he was a pretty big prankster. Once he convinced me my older sister crashed her car into the ocean. So I didn't really believe him when he turned and said, "Walk behind the houses. I think someone's following us." Looking back now, he was probably trying to keep me calm. However, whatever calm was left in my tiny 8-year-old body was gone the moment I turned around and looked. The man had followed us behind the houses, and he was just by the edge of a few houses down near a different fence line. He had a black hoodie on, with the hood up, black sweatpants, and white sneakers. I have pretty bad eyesight now due to some health problems, but back then it was crystal clear, and I could see, with horrifying clarity, that his jaw was hung open. He was just standing there, with his jaw hung open. It was horrifying. I think now that I'm older, maybe he had some kind of medical condition that affected his jaw, or maybe he did crack, I really don't know, but back then, I could have sworn on God I was seeing some kind of demon. Anyway, my brother, when he saw me looking and getting ready to freak out, told me to just run as fast as I can to our house. We booked it. Neither of us looked back, but we were scared out of our minds. Like I said, we only rented the top portion of the house, so the bottom, with a sliding door in the backyard, belonged to some other tenant. I don't remember if she was home or not, but I remember tugging that thing open and locking it as fast as I can, and when I looked up, he was there in the yard, a little way away from the door, staring at us. Me and my brother told my sister and my mother immediately. My father was away on a work trip, but nothing came of it. Not until the day after. We went to go meet my dad at his warehouse, which had a small live-in portion above it where we lazed around until he was ready to head home with us. Around dusk, he came up and told us we might have to wait since the police were here. He walked us around to the back window of the small area to show us police all around the backyard area of the warehouses, to a white van parked on the grass by the edge of the woods. Like I said, I was pretty young, so I don't remember many details of what actually happened, but I do remember my dad, who hadn't been told about the day prior, telling us that they found a man and a woman in the van. The man, he said, had his mouth hung wide open. He seemed really disturbed, telling me about the whole thing and wouldn't answer any more questions about the woman. Maybe she was dead. I've got zero idea. I do know they were arrested on trespassing charges though. I don't know anything else, and I haven't asked about it, and I doubt he'd remember. It's been over a decade and he's pushing 70. But it freaks me out to this day. I still can't believe it happened and I don't have any answers for it. I talked to my brother briefly about it in hopes he remembered more than I do, but all I got was a long tirade about whatever medical condition the guy probably had for his mouth to be like that. He's an annoying medical student now. Sometimes I think maybe he didn't mean any harm and was just drugged out of his mind, but this was like in the world's safest neighborhood and doesn't explain why or how he showed up at my dad's workplace. Edit. If anyone is curious, I asked around a little more for information. I wasn't able to find a lot, but I found out why my father moved away from that warehouse. The police found a dead body in a car near us. I'm not sure if this is the same van or not, or when that happened, but take that as you will. This happened shortly before weed was legalized in Germany. In Berlin, regulation was already quite loose. As long as you didn't explicitly bother anyone, you usually wouldn't get arrested for smoking in public. I've been smoking daily for years. I know, it's not great, but that's beside the point. So I can function pretty well while stoned. However, I almost never smoke in public. Partly to avoid trouble, but mostly because I enjoy the comfort of my own home. One late night, around 3 a.m., I was chilling online with friends, ready to call it a day. I wanted to relax with a joint and one of my favorite shows, but unfortunately, I had no snacks left. Determined to end the night with a proper munchie session, I decided to hit up a nearby Späti, a small convenience store similar to 7-Eleven. At that hour, only the sketchiest ones are still open, often operating illegally. I grabbed my coat and keys, but stopped short before leaving. Why not add a little joy to this cold walk, I thought, rolling a small joint. I lit it as I stepped outside, braving the freezing breeze. The area I live in is pretty rough, mostly foreign residents, many from Arabic countries. Poor integration has led to crime and violence being all too common. Even so, I was in good spirits as I strolled through the flickering neon sign of the Späti. Just one more intersection to go. A group of men stood at the corner. They looked Middle Eastern, a bit older than me, and watched me as I walked by. I felt normal, nothing to worry about, I thought, already a little high. I crossed the street without giving them much thought. Then, I heard a voice call out. "Routine ID check. Please, show me your identification." My heart sank. Of course, this has to happen the one time I smoke in public, I thought, turning to face the police. Only, they weren't police. It was the group from the intersection, now slowly approaching me. "Routine ID check. Please show me your ID." "We're undercover cops," one of them said, with a smug grin. I froze. The fact that they weren't cops became clear when, despite their demand, none of them reached for any identification. "You know smoking weed is illegal, don't you?" the man continued. His pupils were enormous, like saucers. It was obvious these guys had no authority whatsoever. They began circling me. "Show us what's in your pockets," the leader demanded. So, it's a robbery, I thought. As long as I don't resist, maybe I'll only lose my phone and the few bills I brought for snacks. Then, a wave of dread hit me. My weekly tips, about 300 euros in cash, were also in my pocket. I had forgotten to deposit it earlier. Losing that money would crush my tight budget for the month. What now? As I slowly reached into my pocket, the leader pressed me. "Hey, what's taking so long?" I pulled out an old pack of gum and some broken headphones, hoping to satisfy them. "Where's your wallet?" "I need your ID," he insisted. Still fumbling, too stubborn and stupid to hand over my tips, I inadvertently revealed something that shocked even me. The glint of a Glock tucked into his belt. Knives and metal rods are typical weapons here, but a gun? That was insane, even by local standards. German gun laws are incredibly strict. My adrenaline spiked. Slowly, I pulled out the €5 bill I'd planned to use for snacks, trying to keep my expression neutral. "You've got no wallet?" he growled, his face darkening. My brain screamed at me to do something, anything, before this escalated further. Then, a desperate thought flashed through my mind. The Arabs in this area had a well-known fear of Russians, with frequent clashes between the two groups. Maybe, just maybe I could use this. In a heavy Russian accent, I stammered. "My friends have my wallet. They're coming soon. We meet here." To my surprise, their poor English comprehension worked in my favor. They exchanged glances, muttering in German, and decided to wait. I forced myself to look confused, maintaining the bluff. It worked. Their effort to translate or figure me out must have seemed too much trouble. The leader finally pointed at my €5 bill. "All right then, you get us something to drink." Reluctantly, I followed them into the Shveti. They grabbed a 6-pack of Coke and I paid, heart pounding. I was certain this wasn't over, that they'd either search me themselves or retaliate when my non-existent friends didn't show up. But then just like that, they left. No violence, no further questions, nothing. I stood there in shock, unable to process what had just happened. Looking back, I can't believe I bluffed in such a dangerous situation. It could have been my last day on Earth. All over 300 euros. I've learned my lesson. These days, I avoid walking around late at night when the streets are empty. And to those guys from that night, let's not meet again. Ever. About 2 nights ago, I went to see the new Wicked movie with my family, who was in town for Thanksgiving. I arrived back to my house around midnight. I live alone in a shared but divided house, with 2 other tenants living inside. One is upstairs and one splits the downstairs with me, so there's 3 apartments total. My place is in the back of the house, and it has a back porch you can enter through after walking up the whole driveway. When I got home, I sat in my bedroom and did about 20 to 30 minutes of work on my computer. During this time, the house was very quiet and I kept hearing a man's voice continuously talking. Now, keep in mind, the tenant above me is a man, and I know his bedroom is right above mine because I previously lived up there. It sounded like he was talking on the phone just because of how long and continuous the talking went on. I tried to listen and figure out where the voice was coming from, and I couldn't exactly pinpoint it, but it was either coming through the ceiling or on the other side of my room. Now, it must be noted that my bedroom connects to a porch with a door that I have blocked with my dresser. There's a main door inside that porch that you use to get into the house, but there's also this strange door connecting to my room. I couldn't make out the words, but because of how firm and continuous the voice was going on, I figured it just had to be coming from my housemate upstairs. It's the only thing that made logical sense. I just kept on thinking though, I had never heard a single voice come through that ceiling before. It's not that thin. Whatever. I'm worrying about nothing. After about 20 to 30 minutes of computer work, I got up to go brush my teeth, feed my fish, get ready for bed, etc. I come back into my room, turn off the lights, and get in bed. Keep in mind, it's been about 45 to 60 minutes since I first heard the voice, and I could still hear it. Damn, I thought. My housemate is chatting up a storm on the phone up there. Oh, how wrong I was. After about 3 minutes of laying in bed, I all of a sudden hear my porch door creaking along with the talking man's voice. It has a very distinct sound that I knew immediately was my porch door. I crept across my room and put my ear to the dresser, the door that connects to the porch. Sure enough, the talking was coming from inside my porch, and I could hear the door moving and shuffling inside my porch along with it. My heart absolutely dropped. All the lights were off in the house at this point, so I had this sort of sneaky advantage to creep around my house and get a view of what was going on. I crept down my hallway and peered into the kitchen, which the porch leads into. Across the kitchen, through the door, and in a streak of moonlight, I just see a man with long, scraggly hair sitting curled up in the center of my porch, turned around with his back to me, muttering out loud to himself and rocking back and forth. My fight or flight kicked in, and I immediately ripped open the door and started screaming at him to get out and try intimidating him. Looking back, I probably shouldn't have made myself so vulnerable without a weapon handy. But like I said, I was just in fight or flight mode. I can't explain my actions in this moment other than reacting out of fear and determination to scare him out. Anyways, this dude didn't even react to me whipping open the door and screaming at him. Not even flinch. He simply turned his head to the side very slowly and said, "My name is Evan." This freaked me out so much more for some reason, especially because he still hadn't turned around and shown his face. I said, "I don't care," and kept cursing at him to leave, and he slowly rose up with his hands up and said, I know, I'm hiding." He wasn't saying it in a pleading way though. He said it with this almost childlike, playful tone that absolutely freaked me out. I hated this. The fact that he kept trying to reason with me and act so mysterious while still not even turning around to show his face just pissed me off, honestly. Who do you think you are, bro? I ran him out of the porch and was just threatening him. Now, I assume it was just a homeless man who was under the influence of something, as I do live in an inner city area and it's common to see homeless people near my street, but I don't know, man. The sight of seeing him in the porch and Knowing he was in there for at least an hour beforehand while I was sitting right there just freaked me the hell out. I was in full-blown defense mode by the time I opened the door, and I wasn't willing to waste any time to do a character dive on the guy. No imaginable situation would permit anyone to be in my porch like that for an hour. Needless to say, I'll be double-checking my porch lock every night from now on. It's funny because having my room connected to the porch, I always had this horrific, intrusive thought that I'd hear someone in there one night. Looks like it came true. So please, Evan, let's not ever meet again. You creepy bastard. This started when I was at my childhood friend's apartment for what was supposed to be a fun little movie night. We hadn't hung out in a while and we were catching up. Her place is cozy, a little disorganized, and full of girly decor. We were in our comfiest sweatpants about to watch princess movies. Her apartment isn't the most tidy. Things are a bit scattered around, but it's clean and so authentic, which always made me feel at home. We decided on ordering pizza for dinner. She mentioned that Sherwood, someone I hadn't met yet, would bring the pizza over. At first, I was not happy to hear that. I thought that meant she had invited other friends, a boy, over to join us, which wasn't what I had in mind. But I was in for a surprise. Sherwood turned out to just be our delivery guy for the night. He wasn't joining us. When he got to the apartment, there was this awkward air about him. He was obviously nervous, fumbling a bit with the pizza boxes and not quite making eye contact. My friend introduced us quickly, and it was clear from her overly thankful demeanor that Sherwood did a lot more for her than just fetch dinner. After handing us the pizza, there was this brief moment of forced small talk. My friend was super nice to him. Despite his awkwardness, he wasn't the best conversationalist and seemed really out of place. Then Sherwood asked for my number. I was in a tough spot because our mutual friend was sitting right there, so I just gave it to him. Yeah, we chatted for maybe 5 minutes before my friend gave him the cue to leave with something like, "Thanks so much for dropping this off." He seemed to get the hint. We both gave him a hug before my friend said something like, "Drive safe," giving him another kind of cue to leave. When I asked my friend what that was all about, she basically explained that Sherwood was her unpaid personal assistant. He did her grocery shopping, he dropped off pizza, and he did all this other stuff. I think Sherwood was just a really lonely guy, desperate for interaction, especially female interaction. My friend and I were both young and immature back then. We were about 23, but I think we both knew something was seriously wrong with Sherwood. It was a little hard to articulate because we couldn't point out exactly what his problem was. Sherwood started a group chat with my friend and me. He just sent a meme or two every week. It felt like he was trying to stay relevant without being intrusive. Maybe he was used to being sidelined or even blocked by other girls in the past. It felt like he was trying to make me remember him, but also carefully trying not to give me a reason to block him too. I can't speak on his behalf, that's just what it felt like to me. Sherwood also offered to help with errands. The first time I said, "Thanks for asking, but no." He asked every weekend after that. One day, I made the mistake of accepting his help. I knew better. I had recently found a great deal for a new washing machine on Craigslist, but I had no idea how to pick it up and install it. When I mentioned it in the chat, Sherwood excitedly volunteered to take care of the whole thing. He handled the whole pickup and installation like a total champ, which saved me so much hassle. I tried to pay him for his efforts because I wanted to show appreciation, but he wouldn't accept any money. I insisted. Eventually, he suggested that I could repay him by joining him for a hike. I was uneasy about this. It felt a bit too personal and almost like it could be mistaken for a date. But Sherwood framed it as nothing more than a friendly outing, like a transaction to balance out the favor. I agreed to the hike. I rationalized it by telling myself it was a fair trade for installing the washing machine and that it was genuinely a form of payment, especially since I didn't think he had too many friends. This hike felt like maybe a way for him to have some companionship. I thought it might be nice helping him. Part of me was still uneasy about spending time with him in such an isolated setting. The day of the hike, Sherwood picked this trail that was nearby. I had been there before. It was gorgeous. As we walked along together, he chatted about ordinary things like work, the weather, and his hobbies. Everything seemed normal until he suggested that we go off the main path to see something special he wanted to share. We reached the secluded spot, and there was a dead body. My heart pounded so violently as Sherwood stood there, so eerily calm and nonchalant. The casualness in his demeanor made me feel even more uneasy. It felt like he wasn't just showing me a dead body, but also revealing this darker side of himself. It smelled bad, but not like in the movies. I didn't know how long it had been there. I'm not a biologist, but my guess is that it had smelled a lot worse before, but now it had gone down. At that moment, I mumbled some excuse about needing to get back quickly and started walking briskly towards the main path. I was urging Sherwood to follow me. I thought maybe this was some twisted mind game, like a way to intimidate me or show me that he wasn't just some harmless little boy. Maybe he was trying to send a message that said, "You should know I'm familiar with things like this," or maybe he just wanted me to think about it more. Sometimes when I talk to people, I feel like they only notice me for the time that we're together, and then they won't think of me again until the next time we meet. It's possible Sherwood felt that way with me, and maybe he thought showing me a dead body would make him less forgettable. I have no idea. But on the surface, he seemed oblivious to how inappropriate this was. As we walked back together, I was in full fight or flight mode, instinctively looking around to see if there was other hikers or rangers, anyone who could make me feel like I wasn't alone. The moment I spotted someone else on the trail, I called out. Not to expose Sherwood, but just asking for directions back to the parking area. I wanted to make sure Sherwood and I wouldn't be left alone together. I asked this gentleman to walk us back to the parking lot. I wasn't going to take no for an answer. I kept pretending like I was confused about his directions, and eventually he agreed to just walk us there. Getting help from that guy was my way of re-anchoring myself to safety and normality while I was still under the shock of what Sherwood had just shown me. We got to the parking area. There, I called my friend and told her I was with Sherwood. I suggested that he could drop me off with her and that we'd be there in 20 minutes. Sherwood agreed. That was my way of making sure that if anything happened, it was on record that Sherwood was the last person to have been with me. Also, I had immediately texted my friend what had happened to get that on record too. When we got to her apartment, we said thanks to Sherwood and kindly told him to go away. I had already told her through text, but then I started going into all of the detail. The fact that the body had insects, the fact that the face was decomposing but still recognizable, etc. Her reaction was pure horror. Not just about the dead body, but also how nonchalantly Sherwood had treated the whole situation. Her reaction was pure horror. Not just about the dead body, but also how nonchalantly Sherwood had treated the whole situation. She confessed she always sensed something was off about him, even though she'd never imagined anything this disturbing. We both agreed that we needed to remove Sherwood from our lives. She admitted she felt stuck and she had become too reliant on Sherwood to just fire him cold turkey. We planned out how we would do it. It was this gradual phasing out plan. We would limit our interactions to times when others were present. We would slowly reduce our responses to his texts. I would never ask for his help again. And my friend would ask for less and less help. Sherwood kept texting during weekends, offering to help run errands or asking if we needed anything, to which my friend would reply, "I'm trying to work on being more independent, but you've really been such a help." Eventually, as my friend started dating someone new, she introduced Sherwood to her boyfriend. Sherwood never contacted her after that. I had called the cops the same night of the incident, but it was a while before we had more news about it. At least a full month later, a news report confirmed discovering a dead body in that area where Sherwood had taken me hiking. They made an arrest, not of Sherwood, but of this other guy that Sherwood followed on Instagram. I have no idea if Sherwood was connected to the murder. Reflecting on everything, I think there's one clear moral of the story. Trust your instincts. A few years ago, I, 35 male, had a terrifying experience that still haunts me today. I was living in a busy city at the time, and I had just finished a late shift at work. It was around 10 p.m. and I was walking home through the quieter side of my neighborhood. I'm someone who's always been somewhat cautious, so I was alert, keeping an eye out for any unusual activity. As I walked down the street, I noticed a guy about 20 feet behind me. At first, I didn't think too much of it. He seemed like another person just walking the same route. But something about his movements caught my attention. He wasn't walking in a normal manner. He was clearly trying to keep his distance, but his pace matched mine, no matter how fast or slow I went. After a few blocks, I decided to take a detour. I turned onto a side street that was a little less populated, hoping he wouldn't follow. I checked over my shoulder, and sure enough, he was still there. It's hard to describe, but I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand up. My instincts told me something wasn't right. I crossed the street, hoping that would throw him off, but he crossed too, without hesitation. I thought, okay, this is weird now. I had to make a decision. I wasn't that far from home, but something about this guy's persistence made me uncomfortable. I decided to stop at a nearby 24/7 convenience store to try to lose him. The store was empty, save for the cashier, who barely looked up from their phone. I quickly grabbed a drink and stood by the door, hoping to see if the guy would pass by. He didn't. He stopped right outside the store. At this point, I could see his face clearly through the glass. He was staring directly at me. I panicked and ran back into the aisles, trying to calm down. I could hear his footsteps growing louder as he approached the door. I couldn't stay here any longer. I tried to pay, but I was so rattled I couldn't focus on anything. The cashier just stared at me, probably wondering why I looked so frantic. I threw the drink on a counter, paid quickly, and bolted out the door. I ran down another street, not wanting to look back, but knowing I had to. I didn't see him for a while, and my heart slowly started to calm down. But as I turned the corner on my street, I saw him again, standing at the far end of the block. It was like he had been waiting there the whole time. I wasn't sure what to do next. I considered calling the police, but he hadn't really done anything illegal. Just followed me for a while. I didn't want to overreact, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't a coincidence. He was still standing there, watching me, and now he was closer. I took a deep breath, checked both ways, and made a beeline for my apartment building, not daring to look back until I was inside. When I got to my apartment, I locked the door and stayed there, staring out the window for what felt like hours. I didn't see him again after that night, but the whole experience left me unsettled for weeks. I never felt comfortable walking home alone late at night after that. Even though I've lived in the city my entire life, I still wonder if I was just being paranoid, but there was something off about the way he followed me. It felt intentional, and it left me with a gut feeling that I couldn't shake. If you're reading this, the guy who followed me for hours that night, let's not meet again. This happened to me about 5 years ago, and even now, I get chills just thinking about it. I was renting a small house in a quiet neighborhood at the time. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was cozy, affordable, and it had a lot of character. The only thing I didn't love was the crawl space under the house. The access door to it was in the laundry room, a square wooden hatch flush with the floor. It was locked from the outside, and I never really had any reason to open it. I figured it was just pipes, cobwebs, and the usual creepy crawl space stuff. One evening, I came home late from work, and it had been a stressful day, and all I wanted was to shower and collapse into bed. As I stepped inside, I noticed something strange. My laundry room light was on. I was sure I had turned it off in the morning, but I chalked it up to being absent-minded in my rush and turned it off again. That night, I woke up around 2 a.m. to a faint noise. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but as I lay there, I realized that it was coming from the laundry room. A soft, rhythmic thumping sound. My heart started to race. I debated whether to get up and check or just stay in bed and hope it stopped. Curiosity got the better of me, so I grabbed my phone for light and tiptoed to the laundry room. When I opened the door, everything was quiet, but then I saw it. The hatch to the crawl space was slightly ajar. My stomach dropped. I distinctly remembered it being locked, and there was no way I could have accidentally opened it. Trying to stay calm, I convinced myself it might be an animal that had somehow gotten in. I shut the hatch tightly and placed a heavy box of detergent on top of it before going back to bed. The next day, I called the landlord to ask if there was any pest issues I should know about. He seemed surprised and said no one had reported anything like that before. Still, he promised to send someone over to check it out. That night, I double-checked the hatch and even put a chair on top of it for good measure. I didn't hear any noises and I started to feel a little silly for being so freaked out, but around 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of my bedroom door creaking open. I froze. My bedroom door doesn't creak unless you push it slowly, and I knew I had closed it before bed. I stayed as still as I could, barely breathing, as I heard soft footsteps shuffle into the room. My phone was on the nightstand, just out of reach. The footsteps stopped right next to my bed. I could feel someone's presence, their quiet breathing in the dark. Summoning every ounce of courage I had, I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and swung it toward the intruder. There was a man, crouched on the floor, his face pale and gaunt, his eyes wide and unblinking. He looked just as startled as I was. I screamed and bolted out of the room, running outside to the neighbor's house. I banged on their door until they let me in, and they called the police. When the officers arrived, they found the man still in my house, hiding in the crawl space. He had a small mattress, some food wrappers, and a collection of random items he must have taken from my house. The lock on the hatch had been tampered with, and from the looks of it, he had been living under my house for at least a few days, maybe longer. The scariest part? The police said they found a notebook with detailed notes about me. He had written down my daily routine, when I left for work, when I came home, even what I wore. There was also a list of plans, though they wouldn't tell me what was on it. I moved out the next week and stayed with my friend until I found a new place. To this day, I have no idea how we got in or how long he had been watching me before I noticed something was wrong. To the man in the crawl space, that's not me. Ever.
If you made it this far, thank you. Your support truly means a lot to me. Again, if you have any experiences of your own that you would like to share, please consider writing them to my own personal subreddit, linked in description. I hope you have a wonderful morning, day, night, whatever it is for you. Bye.